In meinem Vortrag geht es heute um die Rolle, die die moderne Holzenergie aus Holzpellets, Holzhackschnitzeln und Briketts zur Wärmewende beitragen kann. Das sind neben der Versorgungssicherheit natürlich Wirtschaftlichkeit, Effizienz, Sauberkeit und Komfort. Die Energiewende im Wärmesektor baut jetzt schon zu großen Teilen auf die Holzenergie. Und ich lege dar, wie das Potenzial in der Zukunft noch besser ausgeschöpft werden kann.
I'm Anna Katharina Sievers. I'm head of communication of the German Energy, Wood and Pellet Association, the German Pellet Institute in Berlin. How come that we want modern wood-based energy? Realizing that renewable energies which are used in Germany are consisting of wood to the tune of 80%. You see the significant share of this form of energy. And of these 80%, most uses are not really modern, as it were. High technology, according to our targets, shall be made known better, especially regarding pellet heatings. The potential for the transition of the energy market in Germany shall be fully exploited, and the CO2 savings targets shall be achieved with wood chips, pellets, and briquettes, for example. Now, what are the expectations to modern wood-based energy? Well, first of all, there are requirements regarding climate protection. What is the CO2 savings potential when talking about fossil energy and when switching to wood-based energy? Then air purity in Germany. We've had a long discussion on fine dust for years. Now it's rather related to on-road traffic, but wood heatings are always an issue all the while. And we need to show how, with modern burning technology and combustion, fine dust wouldn't be an issue anymore. Economic efficiency, well, of course, we also need to pay for the energy transition. Consumers won't be prepared to switch to modern renewable energy from an old heating system if people cannot feel it in their purses after some time, as it were. This is also an argument saying it needs to be affordable, safe supply. Where does the combustibles come? You keep reading that forests are shrinking, and I'll show you in a minute that this is not really true. Then comfort and convenience. Do the new facilities offer the same comfort of use? At the end, some current market data in order to get a feel for the volume of this issue in Germany at the moment and what the future perspective could look like. Right, this takes me to our expectations regarding modern wood-based energy. As I said at the beginning, first of all, climate protection has supreme priority. Here you see how much CO2 can be saved per year if a classic old fossil oil low temperature boiler is removed, and if this is replaced by a condensing boiler, it would just save about 0.9 tons of CO2, which is not too much. In gas, it is a little bit more, and if you replace an old oil low temperature boiler by a new modern pellet wood central heating, it amounts to 8.5 tons of CO2, which would be saved each and every year by that station. Hence, you can see that these are quite remarkable figures, and the potential can be increased even much further. Of course, you will ask what climate protection would cost if we have high ambitions regarding CO2 saving here in Germany. The federal government has initiated various incentivization programs and of course the Federal Agency for Economy and Export Control, BAFA, identified how much intensification is necessary for the various types of energy to save 1 ton of CO2. To the very left, you see the tiny green bar, the 13 euro per ton of CO2, which will be filled if an old fossil boiler is replaced by a modern pellet or wood chip boiler. As compared to solar thermal energy, there it would amount to 120 euro per ton. The costs in the state budget. In modern heat pumps, it would be even more, depending on the technology at stake. Hence, the technology of modern wood-based heatings, when related to CO2 saving, which is the goal, is highly economical. Because with 13 subsidization euro, you can save 1 ton of CO2, which is a very good quota. Clean air, well, that's another important goal here in Germany. Of course, there are legal provisions which have been enhanced throughout the years for this purpose. Now, the second stage of the Federal Emission Protection Ordinance, BENJ-V, is applicable. Here you see a list of the strict provisions for CO2 and dust for the various wood heating types. Pellet and wood chip boilers, the classical central heatings, mostly placed in the basement. There, the limit value for CO is only 400 milligram per cubic meter of exhaust gas. For dust, it's 20 milligram. Until a few years ago, this couldn't even be measured with the equipment available on the market. Hence, the chimney sweeps and the industry had to install new measuring devices which were sensitive enough to measure these tiny amounts of dust. For water-guided chimney ovens and air measuring equipment, the limit values for CO are even stricter, and for chimney ovens using logs, which is a major portion in the stock. Hence, classical hand-fired ovens, there the values are not just as strict. Hence, regarding pellets and chop firings, there are very strict provisions which have been in force for quite a while already. There's quite an interesting study of the German Biomass Research Center in Leipzig, asking how much dust can be assigned to wood firings and how is it composed. Well, they found a smart solution in their study, checking which percentage of the wood combustible goes into which type of firing and how much fine dust in percentage figures is assigned to that. In classical individual room firings fired with logs only amount to 60% of the combustibles, but for almost 80% of the fine dust they are responsible, which is due to the fact that this is depending on the technology used, and of course the user adds logs manually. They can adjust the firings themselves, whilst in modern firings from chops right through to pellets, everything works automatically, both the supply of combustibles just as well as combustible air. In pellet boilers and ovens, about 8.5% of the combustibles are used only, and from that only 3% of the fine dust volume results. Hence, you can see the dimension and the potential residing in substitution if the classical old individual room firings are gradually replaced by modern wood firing. and the combustible can be used, of course, much more efficiently, causing less fine dust, of course. Economic efficiency, well, unfortunately at the moment the oil price is very low from our perspective. It's not really an incentive to deal with renewable energy to provide heat. But on this chart, where you can see the price development since 2006, that this has not always been the case. The pellet price is the lower curve, very stable, of course, depending on the weather. It's not depending on speculation like the oil price, which is characterized by very strong ups and downs in recent years. On a mean basis, we can say that during the past 10 years, the pellet price has a price edge of 30% as compared to oil. And if you replaced your old oil heating by modern heating, you could save about 1/3 of the energy costs, and in addition, you spare the environment. Well, as I just said, the state is also incentivizing the replacement of heatings with very high subsidization, which is not that well known, unfortunately. Hence, for the various technologies, pellet ovens, pellet boilers, but also combined equipment, log-based, chip-based boilers, you get some €1,000 when you replace heating, depending on the equipment, which you can see in the table. And depending which category of equipment you use in your buildings, you get direct subsidization during the market incentivization program MAP, and the individual subsidization, which is available until 2018. This can mean for a classical pellet boiler with buffer storage, this can amount to €1,200, which is quite a nice amount of money. Then there's also combined subsidization with solar thermal energy. It's quite complex, and if you have questions on that, we've also prepared brochures for this purpose. It's not so transparent and a little bit complex, but it's quite a bit, and thus, depending on the case, 1/4 to 1/3 is subsidized by the state if we install a new energy system. Safe supply, reliable supply. Well, if all were to heat with wood or pellets, would our forests suffice? Wouldn't be all the forests deforested? Well, people keep asking these questions, but I can tell you very clearly that this is not the case. We have sustainable forest management based on law. Hence, we may only take the amount of wood out of the forest which can be renewed. And here in this chart, you can say that the green peak of the pie, which is what is added in terms of new timber in our German forests, against the backdrop of renewable raw material, only 1/4 is used. Hence, we use only 1/6 of the addition for sawn timber, for cut timber, and well, in sum total, the German forests are growing quite nicely. These are not small volumes, which could be neglected, but it's 1/6 of the annual growth. Pellets are made of ancillary products, of sawed wood, chips, and logs if tree trunks are cut. And this is quite a considerable volume, which is not known to many. From 1 cubic meter of sawn wood, we produce about 100 meters of cut wood, and 40% of that are the ancillary products of sawn products, which are produced if you make board with corners and edges from one round log. And that's the initial product, which is clean and dry, and it can be used for high quality chops and pellets. Another interesting aspect is the fact that before you process your tree trunk, there are also 11% of bark, and normally in the sawmills and pellet works, the sawdust is used for power production, for renewable power. The residual heat is used for drying the chips. Hence, it's a highly complex and complicated process, but which is sustained in the full cycle, and thus all the partial products of the tree trunk are used in a meaningful way locally. To have an idea of the volumes, how many pellets are produced, and how much would be needed, and what about the raw material situation? Well, you see a scenario for this purpose here. In 2015, 2016, we had about 400,000 pellet firing stations in Germany, needing about 2 million tons of pellets. That was produced likewise. If we were to say that we want to reach the climate goals, the CO2 savings goals, we want to make the heat sector renewable, then the question is how many pellet heatings can be fed with indigenous ancillary products of soy. The lighter products are the ancillary soy products produced each and every year in Germany, and this means that about 1 million pellet heatings in the year 2025 could be supplied with these ancillary soy products. On top of that, an additional several million tons of non-sawable round logs are available, like residual pieces and trunks of which you cannot produce nice material, what you can use for furniture making, for example. And, well, this is additional material which could be used for pellet production or for wood chips in an energy-efficient way. Hence, with our 420,000 stations we have at the moment in Germany, we have not yet sufficiently exploited the raw material potential. And if we continue at the same speed, it will still take a few years before we reach the lower level of ancillary residual sawing products. Comfort and convenience is another topic. No one wants to install a new expensive heating, which is hard to handle or which is reason for annoyance. The technology has grown that far at the moment that we can cover all purposes of use, from home-type stoves to industrial application. Soccer stadiums are used with pellets. It's also used in the food production, in the pharmaceutical industry. The advantage, of course, is automatic firing. It is clean and efficient. And, of course, handling is easy. There are more and more users making use of smartphone handling by means of apps. So we can compare with all other types of technology. Of course, we also have to see the entire chain. Of course, we have the combustibles. On the other hand, there are the heating installers, who need to be familiar with the entire complex technology. Since we are still talking about a natural combustible, which you really need to know sufficiently well for everything to function perfectly. We have done our homework in that regard on the combustible side, where we developed the N+ certification, where the manufacturers of wood pellets need to fulfill quality-based requirements, just as well as trade, which is also an important factor. And of course, the final customers need to have direct contact if the pellets are blown into the stocks of the suppliers. And of course, people need to be sufficiently trained to be familiarized well with each and everything. And then we have consultation. This has been introduced in 2011. 1,500 people have already been trained. in this field. We also advised oven studios, and consumers can now turn to experts when it comes to substituting heatings or replacement of old ovens by modern pellet-based ovens. Comfort and convenience, of course, also includes combustible quality, alongside with the pellet certification EN Plus for wood chips and wood briquettes. The EN Plus certification has also been introduced. Hence, through the requirements going beyond the norm are being established. This is currently monitored and checked. And on the respective internet sites, there is an overview of the dealers, if you're interested in that. The advantage being that there is the operation without friction through the combustibles guaranteed to the customers. If there should be complaints, there is a very clear complaints management in terms of customer protection to know sufficiently well what kind of combustibles they use for their wood-based or pellets firings. Do you have any questions on the subject matters? If not, let's take a quick look at the current market data on heatings and pellet production to have an idea of the dimensions. Well, through recent years, there has been a constant upward development, of course, not at the speed we would wish to see and what our member companies are expecting and what they could contribute. At the moment, we have reached about 420,000 units on the market. According to projections for this year, we expect a growth to 455,000 units, broken down to classical air-guided chimneys, then stations of up to 50 kW and water-controlled units, and then large-scale units used in various types of industries. Another interesting aspect is considering the rest of Europe, and there we can say very clearly that Germany is European champion in pellet production with about 2 million tons of production per year. We are self-sufficient. Of course, there's also foreign trade with our neighboring countries, especially with Austria, France, and Denmark. The market in Europe and worldwide is growing. In Germany, it's a pure heat-based market. We can also hear that pellets are taken from US to British power plants for power production. But regarding quality and technology hidden behind it, this is not in line with the German market, where we have a clear focus on highly efficient heat production with wood. Hence, the losses in power production are much higher. And we say wood is such a great product. So we wanted to produce a highly precious combustibles which can be used in a highly efficient way. Here the data on pellet production in gray, the theoretical capacity, the production capacity of German plants if the demand were to grow. This amounts to about 3.4 million tons, which could be produced in Germany. In recent years, also because winters were quite warm, in the last but one winters, we were moving around 2 million tons, which is not up to our expectation. There's still room for action. And since 2006 up to last year, we were ranging clearly above the pellet consumption used in Germany as regard compared to production. Last year it was even a little bit less because some large pellet factories changed owners, and therefore they were standing still for some weeks and months. But as of now, we know already that they have restarted production, and thus our expectation is for 2017 that 2.3 million tons will be produced in Germany, with a consumption we expect amounting to 2.2 million. So this would live up to self-sufficiency in Germany.